for me because I noticed myself just like I'm more calm, and I've just noticed different things about myself over time because I've been doing it for a long time. For like a year now, I've been trying to work with it. That I thought, well, I can bring it to the classroom. So you can walk away with experiencing what mindfulness is like. You can find out how it can be applied to the classroom at any time with any grade level, which is great that it's just kind of K, and I know you're in your own little world.
Our own orbit.
All of the above.
But it's easily adaptable, so that's the nice thing about it. You can acquire different breathing techniques, so you can de-escalate students, and you can also I do them with the students because I'm de-escalating myself, because I see them getting worked up and then I get worked up, and everything going on in the classroom, it's a lot. So I just need to take a couple moments for me just to center myself and go back to, okay, what exactly am I doing? What do I need to do to get this child to calm down? And then you can learn about different mindful exercises, because there's a difference between breathing techniques and mindful exercises. Mindful exercises, it's a longer duration of focused attention. So that's the difference between that. And I just thought to start off, because there's mindfulness, meditation, all these words that go with it, because it has a lot of components. I thought just to define it, mindfulness is John Kabat-Zinn. He basically took this idea because it does come from a religious thing, but it's applied in no way, it's not religious at all. But he took it and changed it, and he uses it in clinical studies, and it's basically you're paying attention in a particular way on purpose, in the present moment, non-judgmentally. Now when they say non-judgmentally, they mean that whatever's happening, I'm feeling really anxious right now, you're not trying to distract yourself, you're not trying to find something to escape that, you're just saying, okay, I'm noticing that I'm anxious right now. I use the word I notice a lot. When I'm talking to myself in my head, I'm okay, I'm noticing right now, I'm still kind of nervous. I can hear it in my voice. I'm noticing that I'm still a little nervous, but I know eventually it's gonna go away and I'm gonna calm down. I just have to keep on talking, and then I'll slow myself down. And then I thought this was kind of helpful to me because, like I said, you hear a lot about what it is and what it isn't. And so I have this chart of what it's not and what it is. Mindfulness is not the cure-all. It's not going to completely change, because I've been doing it in the classroom and it's not changed them completely, but it's definitely helped them in everyday situations and helped them in different moments to get them to calm down. But basically, when you're under stress or you're going through a difficult time, you're looking for ways to cope, especially with difficult emotions, being scared or being nervous. Those, you try to figure out, okay, how can I deal with it? And there are ways to deal with it, with mindfulness. But another important thing about mindfulness is your attitude, and that kind of goes with growth mindset. And I've seen it down the hallways about growth mindset. That's the way that you're talking to yourself. That's your self-talk, in your head. Okay, I can do this. I haven't done it yet, but there's another way. And then it's not religious. It comes from Buddhist or that's where it originated, but basically it's a human experience that we all go through. We all go through, especially when you're reading, you're focusing on the text. Oh, what am I having for lunch today? Oh, wait a minute, my mind's kind of wondering, I need to go back to the text of what I was reading about, or whatever I was reading about, because I'm sure that's happened to everyone, where you're reading the sentence 5 times because you're just not focused. And that's basically what it is just focusing, in essence. And it's not absence of thought. The whole Zen, let all your thoughts go. If you're trying to make yourself your mind go blank, you're gonna go crazy. Okay, I'm making my mind go blank. That's that's not the goal. You're gonna get into that thinking this is not working, and you're gonna get really frustrated easily. It's just you're noticing, okay, I'm not thinking about the music anymore. I need to go back to thinking about the music. You're just refocusing your thoughts. Because thoughts come and go. You have no control over them. You just have to notice, I'm thinking about it, I'm not thinking about it. So we're gonna do a little mindful exercise, and I am gonna turn out the lights because it just makes it more calming that way. And And so we have water, like in the song it has water flowing, it has the piano, birds chirping, I think there's a violin or cello, I couldn't really tell, but there's definitely also like a flute. If you could pick one of those instruments and then throughout the whole song, that is your focus. Like you have to listen to that instrument. If you're hearing the water and then you start to listen to the piano, like going high or low, you have to think, oh, I need to go back to hearing the water flowing because that was my focus. That's what I'm being focused on. So I'm going to turn out the lights, start it over. And you can keep your eyes open, you can keep them closed, it's up to you. So once you start hearing the music, did everyone choose an instrument? You all picked one? Okay. All right. Song's pretty long, so I'm going to stop it there. Okay, and what did you think? So, just some questions about your whole experience, like what was your breath like? Did you notice your breath? Did you get lost in thought? Become aware you weren't hearing the music, and then you had to remind yourself, wait, and listening for the piano, because I know the piano, it took a while for it to come in, so you're probably still listening, but then the water, it was flowing the whole time. So how many times did you have to remind yourself, like, oh, I'm listening to the piano? Did you have any physical sensations? Did you notice anything about your mind, like if your mind, like what your mind was saying, or anything else you noticed or felt?
How about if we talk with a partner?
Yes.
I just think overall it was calming. I think it was like delayed, you know. But honestly, the thing that interjected was when I first started out teaching. It was so this is way back, like 20 years ago. Special class as a boy. And I was coming back and they'd be like,
Did you tell yourself over and over again?
Yeah, birds, and I was like, oh, what am I going to have for dinner? Birds. And then I thought about something about my class, and I was like, birds, stop.
I did the same thing.
It's really hard to get my mind to stop.
Birds.
Yeah, and that's a mindfulness exercise where, like I said, it's a longer duration of you just trying to refocus. And I know some of the studies that they've have talked about in media and online and stuff like that, like how ADHD, how it helps ADHD. That's part of it because you're refocusing, and you're practicing the duration of that refocusing. So I'm not saying mindfulness is going to cure it, especially with someone who has ADHD, like whatever the pediatrician prescribes. I just think mindfulness also can help along that path. So that's in a room full of adults. How do I teach children to be mindful? Because if you were to do the same exercise with children, I don't know if it would go so well. It wouldn't be as easy. So one way is breathing, and that's what we're going to talk a lot about. Exercises that focus attention, like I said, mindfulness exercises. And then the packets that you have some ideas of mindfulness exercises, and they're at the back because that's like the last part. Guided meditations are a good way. In my classroom, we do stories where they have to visualize the story and think about the story, and that's how they focus. They're hearing the story. And then another component is self-talk, like I said, the growth mindset, and the self-compassion. That's a huge one because I have like 2 kids in mind in particular where they get so upset when they make mistakes, but that's because they don't have self-compassion for themselves. They make a mistake and they think it's like they beat themselves up basically. Like their inner self-talk is I'm not good enough. And so I have to model for them, like, yes, you are good enough. You made a mistake. It's okay to make mistakes. We'll just come back to it later. And like the thing about growth mindset and like self-compassion, it's something that I have to talk about every day. I have to talk about in lots and lots of conversations, not like a one-time, here's my whole lesson on it. We have to have multiple conversations about it in order for them to actually pick up and use those same words. And then another part is emotional intelligence and empathy, because that goes along with not just self-compassion, but compassion for everyone else. Just like, you hit someone, like, how did that person feel? Like, I'm not sure for a second and first grade, but that's something you're like, how did that person feel? I have to remind them and ask them. And then emotional intelligence, knowing like what their body is going through and then putting a label to that, like, I'm balling up my fist because I'm feeling angry. Like you have to help them recognize like they're feeling angry. They don't recognize that they're feeling angry. They're just balling up their fist because they're mad, but they don't really necessarily know that they're mad. Like I said, we're going to focus on breathing. And so what is so important about breathing, especially like if you've got a kid who's got a chair over his head, like, and you say, calm down, like, take a breath. Like most time that's not necessarily going to work. And I was kind of excited when I found this study, I guess, because there's now scientific evidence, like it's common sense, like take a breath, like calm down. But now there's actually evidence that's showing like breathing does regulate that, like it's all related and it all goes together. Because basically what they did with the mice, this is me being a nerd, so the mice, they like configured the genetic part of like their brain and the breathing, and they thought it didn't work, but then they came back and when they moved the mice, like I guess when mice move like to a new environment, they're like skittish and they're going around like their surroundings, like just trying to figure everything out in their environment. They were calm, like they did, like they were cleaning themselves, like they were really calm. But when I was reading that study, I was thinking, so like, what about kids when you say, like when you approach them calmly, like take a breath, like let's think about this. I thought this was an important quote. So why do some people still feel anxious after a few deep inhales and exhales? Well, it's possible that their genetic variations mean that they have a dulled response to the cluster that's responsible for regulating the breathing. A couple deep breaths is not exactly going to help them. So it takes more than conscious deep breaths to switch the brain. And then, some like with kids with ADHD, sometimes it takes like medicine too to help them regulate. Sometimes they need the medicine to help get them there. And sometimes you have to consciously teach them in order to be independent with it, so when they get in situations, they can independently choose to breathe. And this is just a little side note. Flipboard, it's got a bunch of articles, like you look up the topic that you want. You can choose what you want to look up, and it all like brings it to you. So it's a neat website if you're a nerd like me, that I just like to read a lot of nonfiction stuff about things like that. So. And then I found this book which is what the whole presentation is about. She's like a yoga instructor, and she did breathing